President Obama designated October 2nd through the 8th as National Community Policing Week, during which time the Department of Justice will lead nearly 400 events to support community policing efforts around the country. In the Red Velvet Cake Studios this morning is Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Roland Martin from Washington, good morning.
Tom, good morning. Attorney General Lynch, good morning.
Good morning, Roland.
When Ronald Reagan was president, a highway bill was passed that forced states to change the drinking age from 18 to 21 if they want to get federal funds. They all changed it. When North Carolina recently passed a transgender bill, you held a news conference threatening to pull federal research dollars from the state's public universities. Why won't you tell cities nationwide if you don't implement needed police reforms in your police department, the administration will withhold federal dollars? I think that might get the attention of lots of mayors and city councils to get on the job.
Great question, Roland, and one that we talk about a lot in Washington with law enforcement, with mayors, and with great commentators like yourself. We do have a lot of programs that support law enforcement. We do have a lot of grants that support training. We have a lot of grants that support community policing, as well as other programs. And built into all of them is the goal to effect change. It's the goal to support the programs that are connecting with people, that are making community policing real, and the desire to use that, as it were, as an impetus to spur change. So when police departments, for example, just yesterday, I announced that our community-oriented policing offices, or COPS office, is rolling out their hiring grants that allows police departments to hire or retain officers. And these are large departments like Chicago and Dallas, but also very, very small departments. And when we have these grants, which are competitive, we give special emphasis to departments that have programs in place to talk about community policing, to talk about better connecting with people. And so we use that as a spur to get action there. There's always a process to review how anyone is handling their grant money. But I'll tell you, it's a lengthy process. It does take a while. And what we have found is that it can be effective to give people the means and resources to actually make the changes that we want them and need them to make. And also sometimes, the money that we have goes for other issues. One of my priorities as Attorney General has been working on human trafficking cases. A case where, there's too many young women and girls, particularly young women and girls of color, who literally disappear from our streets. And nobody should disappear in America, in my view. And so we do a lot of work with local law enforcement for that. And so one of the concerns we have about making all of our grant money contingent on these issues is we don't want to also pull money from valuable resources like that. But believe me, we're very aware that police departments need these funds for a lot of reasons. They also need our training. They need our help. They need our impetus. This really is the issue of the day. And we spend a lot of time making sure that they use these funds to actually further these interests and not to...
It's been 2 years since Eric Garner was killed, also John Crawford III. When will a decision be made as to whether federal civil rights charges will be leveled? It's more than 2 years now.
It has been a while, and it is frankly one of the frustrating things within law enforcement, and more so obviously for family members and community members who see these cases and wonder why. We do talk about process, but while a matter is open, we don't talk about it. I can tell you that that matter is actively open. It is actively being investigated, and we'll be able to talk about it at a later point in time. But I think that also goes to the larger frustration that people have with this system overall. It can be very difficult to see what's happening. It can be very difficult to understand why certain cases go one way and not the other. So we spend a lot of time, once cases are over, trying to talk about not just what we did, but why we did it. Because everyone deserves to know that their voices are heard, that their needs are heard. And I think that those are very, very important issues.
From New York, Sean King.
Sean.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
I have a big picture question, and I appreciated Roland's question, but I want to see if I can ask you a question about Tennessee versus Garner, which was a Supreme Court decision made all the way back in 1985. For the listeners, all the way back in 1974, a young kid in Memphis, a 15-year-old black boy named Edward Garner, was actually shot in the back by Memphis police and killed. He was unarmed, and Edward Garner's father would not let that case go. And he appealed it all the way to the state Supreme Court, all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And in 1985, a full 11 years after his son was killed, the United States Supreme Court said, you are not allowed to to shoot a fleeing suspect. And his father thought at the moment that it was a victory, but there was a little line there that said, you're not allowed to shoot a fleeing suspect unless you believe that they could cause somebody harm. And Attorney General Lynch, I really feel like it's that little phrase there that is protecting officers, that if they believe, based on sometimes a hunch or even their own internal bias, if they believe there's a threat, they're shooting and killing people. Do you feel that Tennessee versus Garner, that's good case law, or that maybe that's something we should look at appealing all the way to the Supreme Court and improving?
You know, I think that what the court often tries to do is cover all the bases and make sure that they are dealing with a specific case, but also giving officers guidance as to how to handle future cases. And so you got to look at everyone individually. I still think, obviously, that you should not shoot fleeing people in the back. And certainly the actions that we're taking in the North Charleston case, I believe, bear that out in the investigation and prosecution of that case. We got to focus on making sure that there's transparency in those police decisions. They're often split second, but people need to understand how they're made, why they're made, and what it means in accordance with the law. So it is, I think it's a case-by-case basis, but I still think the overall holding is the one that we have to hold on to, that the overall thing is that when people turn and flee, the situation has changed.
Well, see, I guess part of my frustration is, we said this earlier, last year 102 unarmed African Americans were shot and killed by police. And in all of those cases, police say they believed that they were under some type of threat, but there really was no dire threat that warranted that type of lethal force. And it's that particular case law that's protecting them. And so no matter what we try to do, that law is there. That Supreme Court decision is there. And do you not see a flaw in that notion that just based on their belief, or sometimes based on their imagination, that they're allowed to shoot and kill somebody?
Well, I will tell you that if in any case, whether it's an officer-involved shooting or any case that depends upon someone's state of mind, what you've always got to show as a prosecutor is the evidence that goes to support that person's assertion of what their state of mind is. And I think that one of the things that transparency and accountability in the process, both in the judicial system, in police review, et cetera, gives people is the ability to have input into that. People need to understand if someone is making that assertion, ultimately there needs to be an explanation of, what does it mean to have that kind of fear. A lot of the concerns that I hear from people every day are exactly as you've expressed. I think everyone understands that people can be afraid, but what they want to know is what was it about a particular situation that added up to that in your mind or in someone else's mind, and what's the objective standard that says whether that was actually right or wrong. And also further, is that the same standard that I as a community member would be held to?
Right.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this tour. I don't know, I said off air, I don't know how you have the time to do something like this, but you said when you took the office of Attorney General, this is what you wanted to do.
It is
one of the things you wanted to do, and I admire you for it. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, thank you so much for coming by, and thanks for talking to the TJMS.
Thank you, Tom Joyner, the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and family. Thank you so much. Thank you for caring about these issues.
Oh yeah, that's what we do.